And I'm joined now by the ABC's Tokyo correspondent Mark Willacy, who's in Morioka in Iwate Prefecture, one of Japan's worst affected areas. Well, Mark, I know that you're in the north of Honshu Island. You're working your way south. What have you seen?
Well, we've seen everything from large fishing boats lying on their sides on city streets to the remains of houses simply torn to shreds and smashed hundreds of metres inland. And we're now in Iwate Prefecture, as you say, one of the worst affected zones, along with Miyagi to the south. And there are entire communities here from where very little has been heard. So the fear is that in the next few days, the full horror of this tsunami will be revealed in some very gruesome detail. But in terms of the more day-to-day impacts, today we saw petrol queues stretching back hundreds of metres. We went into supermarkets and convenience stores which were just stripped of fresh food and things like milk. And we saw entire towns deserted. So the impact here, put simply, is almost incomprehensible.
So what's going to be the biggest challenge? It must be such a long list, but the biggest challenge for authorities in the prefecture where you are?
Immediately, it's going to be just getting to obliterated towns and villages along this coast and trying to hunt for the survivors. That's the biggest challenge. Entire roads have been swept away. There's massive wastelands of mud, debris and smashed up cars which are standing in the way of rescue teams. But most now know that this is more likely to be a recovery operation, and it's also a mission as well to get life back to normal in surviving communities. And as I mentioned, petrol is in short supply, as is fresh produce. Industry is shut down. People simply don't know what the next few days or even weeks are going to bring.
And the area that you're in, for Japan, it really is pretty much off the beaten track, isn't it?
It certainly is, and it's made it very difficult for the government. So what it's done is basically quarantine the major highways around here so it can move troops, food, recovery teams, heavy equipment in. We were fortunate enough to convince the police here in Iwate to issue us with a pass allowing us to use these highways. And so tonight I drove about 120 kilometres south from Hachinohe to Morioka, and the only thing I passed on the main highway was a convoy of trucks, each with a bulldozer blade mounted on the front and digging equipment loaded in the back. So securing the transport links has been the key to getting personnel and supplies into these affected areas and keeping the public out of the way. But most people here in Iwate know that they're going to have to put up with blackouts, fresh food shortages and long petrol queues for some time to come.
Mark Willacy, many thanks. And we were looking at pictures there while Mark Willacy was reporting of areas neighbouring the region that he is in.